Welcome to today's webinar. This is your introduction to effective speech-to-text solutions, and this is presented in partnership with Global Alliance of Speech-to-Text Captioning. The presenters today will be Terry Airline, Kimberly Shea, Tia Jackson, Kelly Barnard, and Kate Lewandowski, presenting on today's topic. My name is Layla Jerma, and I will be your MC today, ensuring that everything is running well behind the scenes. To describe myself, I am an African woman with black hair pulled back in a bun. I'm wearing a black t-shirt, and I'm in a room with gray walls and a door next to me.
Hi, my name is Kelly Barnard. I work for West Virginia University. I am a white woman with mostly short hair, some pulled to the side. And I am wearing a gray button-up shirt with a black background. I'm going to talk about speech-to-text services today. Next slide, please. Next slide. All right, so what are speech-to-text services? First of all, they are an ADA compliant method by which a captioner or transcriber converts spoken word into text that can be read in real time. It provides equal and effective access and can be an important tool to facilitate effective participation in a variety of events from the classroom, extracurricular activities, religious ceremonies, and events like graduation and convocation, as well as other uses. Next slide. Who is speech-to-text useful for? Certainly useful for students who are deaf. It's also useful for students who are neurodiverse. You can see some examples there: ADHD, autism spectrum, anxiety. A lot of uses are included there. It's also useful for those who are learning English and those for whom English is a second language. Next slide. Here we have an example of meaning for meaning, a meaning for meaning transcript versus a verbatim transcript. The meaning for meaning transcript is on the left of the screen. You can see that it is a lot less dense than the verbatim example on the right. Filler words have been taken out, false starts, as repetitions are removed. And we are able to bold terms to draw attention to them. We can also call attention to important dates or announcements with bolding. You can see that it creates a shorter transcript that's clearer and easier to read in real time. Next slide. Okay, so both TypeWell and cPrint are meaning for meaning transcription methods. They are real-time speech-to-text systems, so the transcriber is transcribing in real time and readers can read the transcript in real time. It's provided by highly trained and experienced transcribers, and it allows for two-way communication between transcribers and students. By that, I mean, if a student has a question that they would like to be voiced, they can send that to their transcriber. They could also just send a note that maybe they're going to step out of the room briefly and they'll be right back. TypeWell also includes math mode, so it's really great for STEM classes. It allows us to capture equations and mathy sort of talk for a student in real time as well. Next slide. So meaning for meaning transcription is a complete conveyance of everything that a speaker is intending to say, and it's just results in a transcript that has many fewer words because of the unnecessary words that are omitted. It still can capture emphasis on words, tone, humor, sarcasm, nonverbal cues. It does omit false starts, filler words, disfluencies. Anytime someone misspeaks, we're able to take that out of the transcript, and it makes a much easier to read transcript. This allows for assimilation and participation. Next slide. So regarding TypeWell qualifications, TypeWell transcribers are highly trained. They learn an abbreviation system that allows them to type at roughly the speed of speech. It is a program designed specifically for meaning for meaning and not verbatim transcribers. Transcribers are required to do an annual skill verification after their initial training. If they've been inactive for a year, they are advised to take a refresher course. And if they're inactive for 2 or more years, their qualification is lost. They need to retake the evaluation and potentially a refresher course to be reinstated as a transcriber. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Kimberly Shea, and she's going to give you an overview of CART.
Kimberly, you're muted.
Every time. I am a steno captioner, and so that's just one of the things we do. We stay on mute 100% of the time. My name is Kimberly Shea. I am the current chair of the Global Alliance. I'm also a founding member. The Global Alliance of Speech to Text Captioning is an organization made up of experts who receive speech to text services and the experts that provide those services. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about CART real quick. I am a white woman with very dark hair. I have green glasses on and a maroon turtleneck. Okay, what is CART? It stands for Communication Access Real-Time Translation. It is a near verbatim speech to text service that provides a text stream of the spoken word in real time. It includes false starts, environmental sounds, speaker IDs, and it's performed by humans. They are steno captioners and voice captioners. There's a little bit of a difference, and we'll go through those. Next slide, please. Okay, as I said, I'm a steno captioner. We are trained to convert spoken word into real-time text using our steno machine. We have key combinations that match the phonetics of words and phrases, and we turn that into a machine shorthand. We have specialized software that then takes that shorthand and turns it back into readable text, and it is displayed simultaneously on various different options. Next slide. Voice captioners, they speak into a microphone or a steno mask, and their specialized software recognizes their voice and then turns that back into readable text that is simultaneously streamed on different displays. Next slide, please. Okay, I love this chart. I hope that this will be a great resource for you. We don't have time to go into the details regarding the different accuracy models, the NER versus the WER, but I am the person at the Global Alliance that leads 2 projects measuring caption accuracy. So if you're ever interested, please reach out. I am happy to discuss all things related to accuracy and that kind of thing. And I can explain the differences of these certifications. This is important because pre-COVID, there were still challenges that existed, but there is no requirement for CART providers to be certified to provide speech-to-text services. And post-COVID, that has presented some challenges that has made it crucial that you make certifications a priority. These are the 3 related to CART that are specifically designed for speech-to-text services. And you'll know that if someone has these certifications, you know that they have been tested on speed and accuracy. That is listed here. The NCSP does require providers to be recertified every 4 years, which is very, very important. It requires extensive training and enormous skill to provide verbatim services. And this will let you know that your captioner has been tested in these things. I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Terry Erline. I am, pronouns are she, her, and I am a white woman with gray shoulder length hair, and I'm wearing a black t-shirt today with a white background. I've worked as an interpreter and as a coordinator of both interpreting services and speech-to-text services for over 20 years. So today we're going to talk about a variety of topics. We'll start with deciding when to provide speech-to-text services. The most important thing to do is talk to the student. The student is the best source of information to help determine if speech-to-text services would be helpful. There's a lot of different variables that you can talk about to try to make the decision. The first one is the setting. So does the size of the room make a difference? Does the room setup make a difference? That kind of thing. The next one relates to content. Is this a topic, this class, something that the student is very familiar with? Is this a class that they've never had before? Is it a class that's going to have a lot of vocabulary that's new that they're going to need to learn? That all of these variables may impact their learning and their accommodations. The next one is the instructor factors. Is the instructor easy to lip read? Is it helpful to lip read? Does the instructor pace around a lot while they're teaching? Does the instructor face the board while they're speaking? Then also, what strategies have been used by the student in different settings? So in a large room, for example, what strategies are needed by the student to learn if the professor is wearing a mic? What if the professor is not wearing a mic? What if it's a super interactive class? How does the student get information, or what strategies have been used? Finally, talking to the student about what type of accommodations that they have used before and what's been successful is helpful. Next slide, please. One question that comes up often is, can speech-to-text services be provided instead of sign language interpreting? This goes back to the student again. The student's choice should always be the primary consideration related to the accommodations that are provided. Alternate accommodations can be considered if you're providing it. Alternate accommodations may be considered if providing their preferred accommodation will cause an undue burden to the institution or be a fundamental alteration of the material. An undue burden is not likely a valid rationale to providing an alternative accommodation. The reason for that is the burden would have to be to the entire institution, not just the Disability Service Center. It could be or an example of a fundamental alteration could be if the format of the class and the goals of the class for the professor are for it to be very interactive, discussion-based type of setting. And if the student's requesting interpreting for the class, it could be a fundamental alteration of the course objectives if the student's not able to participate in the discussions and the interactive component due to not being able to use American Sign Language. So even if the captioner is on site, the student may want to participate using American Sign Language and is not able to fully participate in the way that they want to by using speech-to-text services and needing to type all of their answers. So bottom line is the alternate accommodation needs to be equally effective. Next slide, please. Next question is, can the speech-to-text transcripts be used as notes? Speech-to-text services are intended to provide real-time communication access during the event. The goal of the notes is to provide important points and to capture any visual material that's being shared. Transcripts are intended to be an accommodation to the individual student. So if there's a request to share the transcript with other students or even with the instructor, that would need to be considered case by case, as the transcript could contain confidential information and student names. Next slide, please. Another question is, how can speech-to-text services be evaluated? Speech-to-text services should be observed and be evaluated, and there's multiple factors that you can look at while you're observing. First one is accuracy. Are they writing what you're hearing? Check the accuracy of the message. The next one is speed. Are they able to keep up with the instructor's pace? Next one is readability or white space. Some text transcripts are very dense. Some, when they add more white space, can make it easier to read. So adding that white space is important. Does the captioner include proper punctuation? That's important. Are they using upper and lowercase text? Are they identifying speakers so that you know which student in the class is speaking versus which instructor? Are they incorporating environmental sounds? So if there's laughing happening in the back of the room, are they incorporating that so they know why everybody's turning or their peers are laughing? Do they note when there's information missed? Or do they specify the reason why the information's missed? So maybe they missed a concept because somebody was coughing. So letting the student be aware that something's missed, they can follow up on that if they need to. Finally, are they incorporating prep materials? So hopefully they've received prep and they are using the specific terms that they received in their prep so that the names and all of the terms are populating correctly. And lastly, are they communicating if and when there's an issue? So communicating both with the student, so letting them know what's going on, their audio went out, their internet went out, something like that, versus they had an issue with the instructor and the instructor was asking questions or wasn't revoicing other student comments in the back of the class, something like that. Who are they communicating with? How are they communicating? So all of those things are things that you could have a conversation with the captioner about. Next slide, please. Next, some factors to consider when you're providing remote speech-to-text services. The first one is the class environment. So thinking about the classroom, is this a classroom that is, for example, like a lab? So there's a lot of background noises. There's glass clinking. Students are walking around. It's very busy. Is this a class that's happening outside? Is this a class that's in a huge lecture hall? All of those things are really important to consider. The next one is the structure of the class. So is it a straight lecture with one person speaking? Is it an interactive class with 20 students all talking? Is it 4 or 5 groups all talking at the same time? That kind of thing. And then also technology needs. How are you going to capture the audio in that specific environment? And also what equipment is needed. And then you also need to think about the training for the instructors and the students. So the instructors need to know how to wear the mic properly so that they don't have it upside down or in their pocket, that kind of thing. They also need to know that the captioner is going to need prep material, and they need to know that they should communicate if there's a change in modality or location or something like that. The student is going to need training on also the mic. How do they set it up? Do they need to set it up? They also need to know where they're going to find the captioning. And they need to know and brainstorm how or what are they going to do if the instructor isn't wearing their mic for the day. I also want to go back and mention that a student may choose a verbatim method in one type of class, depending on the structure, and they may choose meaning to meaning, speech to text in another class. So for example, they may want more verbatim transcript in a lecture, and they may want more of a meeting for meeting in a lab type of environment where there's a lot more going on, and they just want to use different services in different classes. And again, that can be based on the format of the class. Next slide, please. Okay, I'll now turn it over to Kate Lewandowski from NDC.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kate Lewandowski. I am a strategic support specialist here at the National Deaf Center. I'm a white woman with blonde hair. I'm wearing a dark black shirt with a dark background as well. My pronouns are she and her. I will talk a little bit about the difference between automatic speech recognition and speech-to-text services. Let's move to the next slide. You know that with the pandemic beginning in 2020, there was a huge shift to online courses, and that meant an increase in use of automatic speech recognition. We know that ASR is out there, it's used a lot, but it is not equivalent to a human-provided speech-to-text services. ASR is 60 to 70% accurate, and because of that low percentage of accuracy, it cannot be considered or reasonably assumed that it is an effective or equivalent access. ASR and the quality of ASR depends on a lot of factors that we will discuss, but those factors include sound quality, terminology and vocabulary being used, background noise, the speaker's own speech patterns. For more information about ASR and why it is not considered effective, we encourage you to watch our webinar on why automatic captioning is not considered effective. We will post a link to that webinar in the chat. Let's move to the next slide. So at NDC, we looked at some common errors that are found with automatic speech recognition programs, and these are 5 of the usual problems that occur with automatic speech. First is proper grammar and punctuation markers. They're often missing or incorrect in automatic speech, and that impacts the ultimate understanding of the person reading that message. Secondly, are multiple speaker identification and changes. When a new speaker isn't identified, or it's not consistently identified, that also can change the way the information is understood. Third, technical vocabulary, jargon, or proper nouns. It's often missing or misspelled when it happens with ASR. Fourth, here we have homonym differentiation. That simply occurs when words that are spoken very much the same way, if not exactly the same way, are misspelled and misinterpreted by ASR. Finally, here, and fifth, we have environmental sounds or background noises. that is often left out of automatic speech recognition programs. There are a variety of different types of programs, and depending on the software being used, the information shared will be different. We see a big impact when we compare ASR to human-provided speech-to-text services. So let's look at the next slide, and we'll focus a little bit more on that. All right, as you see on this slide, we are comparing automatic speech recognition with speech-to-text services. Take a moment to look over the differences there. You can see how even one incorrect word can make a world of difference. For example, can't versus can. For that deaf student, that one word, as it relates to homework, makes a significant difference in what they have taken away from that class and understood. Second is an example of homonyms. The words sound the same, but they are spelled different, and you can see how the difference in spelling has a big impact. Also, there's misunderstandings for technical jargon, as you can see with the word acetaminophen there. That technical jargon is not a word that comes up often, and so ASR recognizes it as something different. Often ASR does not capture the correct word, where a human speech-to-text provider has prepared, has a dictionary ready to go, and is ready to catch those technical terms and jargon. Next, you can see the importance of punctuation within grammar. So you see the example there of punctuation missing and how it can completely change the meaning. Let's not eat grandma, okay? And then the final example here shows speaker identification. When speaker identification is there, you can see how important it is to the comprehensibility of the text. A human speech-to-text provider can identify the speaker and break out when one person is speaking versus another. Next slide, please. You know, here at NBC in our help desk, we often get questions that come up often about the differences between ASR and CART. That is a very frequent question that we receive whenever a service provider in an office at a college or university has a student that requests CART. They quickly are concerned with the price of a CART provider. The campus may ask the student, you know, what are some other options? Do you use automatic speech recognition in replacement of CART services? Can we provide that? That's the question we get very often. The school is obligated under the Americans with Disabilities Act and Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act to provide services. Private institutions, including nonprofit institutions, are also required to do this under Title III. So if you receive federal funding, you are required under Section 504 of the Biden Act. So it's important to understand that, yes, there is cost associated with human-provided speech-to-text services. But when institutions ask us if the cost of accommodations can create an undue burden for their campus, we often tell them that a very high standard is set for undue burden, because when a case is brought to the Office of Civil Rights, they look at the entire college budget to see if there is an actual undue burden. So it must, again, meet that very high bar, and it will be very difficult to justify a denial of services based on that. Those claims are rarely successful.